Hello. Great. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Laura Gil, Communications Officer for UN Office on Drugs and Crime. And I'm happy to be here because today we're going to discuss a trend that is reshaping drug trade in the region and possibly beyond. We're taking you to the hills and valleys of Myanmar, while the world's attention is in other places. For decades, Afghanistan dominated headlines as the world's opium supplier. But the story is changing. Myanmar is now front and center. Today you will hear about a few statistics, and these numbers are representing more than just numbers. They represent the choices made by farmers with few alternatives, the complex realities of a country in crisis, and the implications that reach beyond Myanmar's borders. We have two experts with us here today. Mrs. Delphine Schantz, the new regional representative for Southeast Asia and the Pacific for UNODC, who was leading the office in New York before, and Inshik Sim, lead analyst on drugs and organized crime and one of the authors of the report, which is what they will talk about today, the Myanmar Opium Survey 2025, what's happening on the ground, why it matters, and what comes next. So, over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. And good morning to all. As Laura mentioned, I'm the new regional representative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC. So the report that you have in front of you is now the result of the 23rd Myanmar Opium Survey, which is based on the consistent, well-proven and evidence-based methodology that my colleague, Mr. Inshik Sim, will detail in a few minutes. So 4 years after the military takeover, the opium property cultivation continues to grow and has reached like a 10-year highest peak with a 17% increase in 2024 and 53,100 tons, with the highest increase in the region of the East Chan and Chin. The yield production, however, declined by 13%. So obviously we can attribute this to the disruption brought on by some internal conflicts that have made it harder for the farmers to maintain the same level of productivity, but also the access to fertilizers, and we will address some of those reasons in my colleague's presentation. With this figure, Myanmar remains the known largest producer of opium in the world, ahead of Afghanistan, which, following the takeover by the Taliban, and the opium cultivation in this country keeps decreasing. And so we see, because of the amount of cultivation in Myanmar currently, some signs of heroin being trafficked from the Golden Triangle all the way to Europe. But the farm gate price for both fresh and dry opium have also increased by respectively 8 and 11%, which is reversing last year's trend where the price were actually decreasing. And obviously, the fact that the price for the farm gate will increase will certainly draw more farmers to grow, because this is an important economic livelihood for them, despite all the good efforts that have actually been deployed for alternative development. And as you know now, Myanmar is actually an important producer of coffee, which has actually really gained international reputation. So we see that the opium income continues to be a very important source of revenue, and my colleague will focus on that, on some of the percentages of the GDP, the overall GDP. And the most profitable activity remains heroin production and trafficking in 2025. Transnational organized crime are benefiting, obviously, from high level of instability, and have certainly leveraged the gaps in the law enforcement and the governance to expand their criminal activities, including drug trafficking, but also on the scam centers operations. It is very also important to underline the domino effect to a higher increase of cultivation within important figures in terms of increase of drug use, particularly within the 3.6 internal displaced persons community, following all obviously protected conflict in Myanmar, but also the earthquake earlier this year. So the upcoming phased electoral process period, which will start on the 20th of December and will probably continue in 3 different phases until the end of the first quarter of 2026, might also bring further instability and deepen some of the existing fragilities that have created through this ongoing crisis in Myanmar. So I will now pass on the floor to my colleague Inshik to go through this report inside from the methodology and some of the further details on some of the insights that I've just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Delphine. Hello, hi. Thanks for coming over here today. My name is Inshik Sim. I work for United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Regional Office for Southeast Asia and the Pacific. I serve as a lead analyst on drugs and organized crime. I really like to thank you, all of you, to come over here today. We are pleased to share some of the major findings on the Myanmar Opium Survey 2025. So these are the table of contents. I'm going to start with an introduction that explains some of the value of this opium survey. As Delphine mentioned, this is the 23rd of the episode of this opium survey that we've been doing, because it is important for us to understand the extent of opium poppy cultivation and production in Myanmar as it impacts on the other countries surrounding Myanmar as well. And I want to explain over the methodology, how we arrive at some of the numbers in this report, and then followed by major findings, implications, and conclusions. So this opium survey is basically to assess the scope of opium poppy cultivation and production. And this year, we have, for the first time, the Sagaing was fully included in the assessment. We look at Shan, basically Kachin and Chin, Kaya in the past, but this time we, for the first time, included Sagaing as well. It is important because, as you all know, that there is ongoing instability in Myanmar due to conflicts, and then associated implication on social disruption, economic disruption, and all these factors contribute to these Myanmar opium poppy cultivation practices. And also there are external factors that which I'm going to explain to you today as well. So why do we do this? Based on the findings of this report, we come up with a programmatic responses to support our Myanmar farmers, as well as some other measures to institute to better deal with the challenges associated with this opium production and heroin trafficking as well. So methodology. This year we look at mainly 2 parts. One is the area estimation to monitor the extent of opium poppy cultivation. And the next one is a crop yield survey to estimate potential yield for opium. We do this through the combination of technology and field visit for verification purposes. And we do have a very thorough quality control procedures which was applied by the national and which were basically adopted by national and international experts. So for area estimation, we look at we have sampling approach and target area approach. Sampling approach is basically we look at areas such as Shan and Kachin, where we know that there's a large scale of opium poppy cultivation is ongoing. For area like Chin and then Kaya and Sagaing, we focus on more like risk area that we know that already there is opium poppy cultivation is ongoing. So that's what we meant target area selection. We of course adopt a very high resolution and high resolution imageries to interpret them. And then when we select some of the areas, we look at the land cover and altitude, which are important for opium poppy cultivation, and also known risk area. This year, we look at 138 sample areas, which is the largest by far over the last 5 years. As you can see, 2024, only 46 samples were adopted, largely because we have more funding this year that allow us to look at more areas in 2025. As I mentioned earlier, it is supported by the ground verification process. In 2025, we visited a total of 18 these sample areas. We had some difficulties. As you know, there's some of the security reasons and the transportation connections are not really ideal in some part of the opium poppy being cultivated in Myanmar. But nonetheless, 18 ground verifications were conducted. This is also the largest number since 2020. 16 of them were located in Shan State, 1 in Kachin State, and 1 in Sagaing region. And as you can see, that some of the our interpretation of this high-resolution imagery is being verified by our colleagues who visited this opium poppy cultivation site. Yield estimate, also 2025, we looked at more poppy capsule and visited more poppy field as well. So total of 262 poppy fields were visited in 2025. A large majority of them are located in Shan State. And we look at total of 7,820 opium poppy capsules to understand the opium yield in Myanmar in 2025. So all in all, I'd like to highlight that this year report has a more number of samples and also more number of poppy capsules that we looked at. So it gives you a better estimate on the extent of opium poppy cultivation and production as well. So let me move on to major findings. This is a graph of the area under opium poppy cultivation in Myanmar over the last 2 decades. 2025, the area under opium poppy cultivation in the country amounted to 53,100 hectares. If you compare to that number in 2024, that represents 17% increase. However, if you compare with the 5 years ago, basically a year before when the military takeover took place in 2021, it represents 80% increase. So you can see that very sharp increases in the opium poppy cultivation in Myanmar, followed by the military takeover in the country in 2021. In terms of the proportion of the opium poppy cultivation in Myanmar, largely, nearly like 90% of these 53,100 hectares were recorded from Shan State. South Shan as being largest, as usual, followed by East Shan and North Shan. Kachin represents about 8% with 4,250 hectares. And Chin, Kaya, Sagaing, you can see the number combined together represents about 4%. The interesting point here, an important point to highlight, is that all these surveyed state and region reported increases in the area of under opium poppy cultivation in 2025. There has been uneven increase. As you can see, that the largest increase were recorded from East Shan and then also Chin State. However, there is a relatively low increase observed in North Shan. And I think that this is mainly related to some of the conflict issues. That, as you know, that North Shan has been kind of forefront of the ongoing conflicts in Myanmar. As Delphine mentioned, this opium poppy cultivation increase was somewhat offset with the decreases in the opium poppy yield, opium yield basically. We look at all these capsules that I mentioned earlier to see how much opium can be produced, and then per kilogram per hectare basically. And in 2025, it was reported as 19.2 kilogram per hectare. Which is relatively high still compared to the data reported before the military takeover. However, compared to 2023, the number has decreased quite a bit. Compared to 2024, it represents about 13% decrease. Also, another interesting point here is that we look at the poppy the yield in these 3 Shan State area and Kachin. They all reported decreases in yield. Especially, it is noticeable, the North Shan reported the largest decrease with 27%. And we also were able to look at some of the poorly managed poppy field in the North Shan area. So there was a poppy field, it was not managed well, there is no fertilizer, there was no irrigation system, and being basically abandoned, and that resulted in the very low yield in some parts of North Shan State. So all in all, increases in open poppy cultivation by 17%, but decreases in yield. Combine this together, the opium production in Myanmar in 2025 shows some stable trend. So all in all, 1,010 tons of raw opium we estimate being produced in Myanmar in 2025, which is basically just 1% increase compared to 2024. And if you look at by different part of the country here, that shows that decreases in North Shan, but also decreases in Kachin, but increases in South Shan and East Shan. I mentioned earlier on the conflict and the role of conflict in this opium economy in Myanmar, that we look at how, especially we look at the harvest seasons of Myanmar and the conflict at the time. I don't know whether you can see some of the pink color that overlaying on this graph basically shows that harvesting period of this opium poppy in the country. It shows that some of the intensifying conflicts around North Shan area, which resulted in, we believe, the decreases in the yield and also the less increases in the opium poppy cultivation area as well. Because as you know, with the conflict has been intensified in the late June last year, some parts of North Shan area, and then it resulted in the displacement of over 30,000 people that we estimate by United Nations. And because of that, there is a shortage of labor supply and the disruption of fertilizers to the area where it requires this fertilizer, basically. We also look at the density of the opium poppy cultivation area. It shows some interesting points here. Overall, a lot of these areas that are known for high density of opium poppy cultivation continue. And an interesting point is that some of the international border area shows a high density, especially on the Kachin side, bordering China. Also India side, both Sagaing and Chin show their kind of high density of opium poppy cultivation. And another point is around the Wa area, the right next to the Wa area, as you can see that there is a very high density of opium poppy cultivation. And what we've been hearing from the field in Myanmar is that there has been some encouragement of more opium poppy cultivation to be done in Chin State as well. So in 2026, we are now planning to look at more maybe sample areas in Chin State because of this development as well. It is important to look at the opiate economy in the country because it really accounts for a significant share of the entire Myanmar GDP as well. To do that, we need to look at the dry farm gate price of this opium. Has been very fluctuating quite a bit. If you compare this price data together with opium poppy cultivation, the area on the opium poppy cultivation in Myanmar, it showed very interesting trend. As you can see, it was really peaked in 2013 when the opium poppy cultivation was high. But we all know that starting from 2015 around, this drug market in the region has been dominated by synthetic drug, mainly methamphetamine. And that really impacted on the prices of opium in Myanmar. So farmers were making less money out of this business. And it really was really low until 2020. But again, followed this military takeover in 2021, the prices of opium been showing overall upward trends. In 2025, a kilogram of dry opium is about reported as 329, which is a slight increase compared to last year, but more or less, I think, stable. And then fresh opium was 329, and the dry opium is $365, which is necessary to have it dried first to make it heroin. So that cost reflected in the increases in the higher price in the dry opium. So we look at the opiate economy in Myanmar, not only the farm gate price, but we also look at how much money is being generated by all this opium and heroin trafficking from Myanmar as well. The overall size of opiate economy decreased in 2025, despite of slight increases in the dry opium price in dry opium price in Myanmar. This is mainly because of the decreases in the wholesale prices of heroin in surrounding countries of Myanmar. Especially you can see the noticeable decreases in the heroin price in Thailand. I think it's been related with the more quantities of opium and then heroin has resulted in the overall decreases in the prices of heroin in surrounding countries. As a result of that, there has been a 17% decrease in the overall opiate economy. Farmers' cut is relatively stable. As I mentioned, the production is stable, price is stable, slightly higher than 2024. If you just divide this overall opiate economy, about 1/3 of the income of 1.05 billion goes to farmers, and the others goes to basically trafficker side. And the overall opiate economy, as I mentioned, is up to 1.05 billion in the country, which is about 1.4% of the entire Myanmar GDP. So what does it all mean? We look at the increases in the cultivations. Some are offset with the decreases in yield, a wider availability of opium, and then that means that more quantities of heroin potentially can be produced in Myanmar. So we look at some of the seizure location of heroin and opium in the country, and then we overlay with the density maps of the opium poppy cultivation. We can definitely see some of the trafficking flows of heroin. For instance, north and northeast flows to China continue. However, it's very small dot. We see that decreases in the heroin seizure overall in China. And also we see that the touch leg near the border with Thailand, there has been a big seizure relatively that shows that continuous flows of these heroin flows from Myanmar to Thailand, and also Laos as well, the eastward flows that continue, that we were able to observe that continuation of that trend. But interesting point here is we see that the westward flow is very visible, that goes to Kale and Tamu. That India, if you look at the northeastern part of India, which is really not well understood their drug economy, we've been looking at the drug flows from Myanmar to northeastern part of India. We started with mainly Yaba tablets, but we also see many attempts of heroin trafficking from Myanmar side as well. We believe that there is, at the moment, we need more evidence, but what we've been hearing from the field is that increases in the opium poppy cultivation in Chin and Sagaing. I think it has to do with the somewhat, it has to be seen as also in relation to the northeastern part of India and their demand for heroin as well. Delphine mentioned in a speech that there is a steep decreases in the opium poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan since the Taliban takeover. Basically 95% decrease. And as you can see that the graph really tells very sharp decrease in opium cultivation in Myanmar as well as production in Afghanistan. So estimated about 300 tons of opium produced in Afghanistan in 2025, so which is not even 1/3 of the amount of what Myanmar is estimated to produce in 2025, which is 1,010 tons. So now Myanmar as a known leading sources of opium at the global level. Altogether, there is a shortage of heroin at the global level. I think that when the peak of Afghanistan in 2017, there was estimated 9,000 tons of opium were produced. So even if Myanmar, the increases in Myanmar is not really enough to fill the gaps of these requirements of opium for the heroin manufacture. However, we see some of the Myanmar heroins been increasingly trafficked to different parts of the world. These are some of the individual cases. One case reported late 2024, there was a Nigerian, it was trafficked from Thailand, 13.3 kilograms of heroin. We didn't really see this kind of heroin trafficking flow from this region to others because the traditional markets of heroin coming out of these golden triangles are basically East and Southeast Asia and part of Oceania. However, we see that more westward flow happens as well. And if we have here European colleagues here, you know that some of the Nigerians have some distribution networks inside Europe for this heroin as well. So I believe that this trafficking attempt may indicate that they are sourcing heroin from here for the distribution in Europe. And the other case was the amount itself is small, but still it shows that the flows of the heroin from this region to Europe. In fact, European Drug Agency, known as UNODC, the latest report recognized the total of 60 kilograms of heroin being trafficked by passengers by air from Thailand to Europe between 2024 and early 2025. In the past, we didn't see that kind of attempt. So I think that Myanmar heroin's been supplied to some extent to the European market. So conclusions. Before I do that, I want to just revisit some of the major points here today. 4 years after military takeover, opium poppy cultivation at a 10-year peak with 53,100 hectares in 2025. Opium production in 2025 was reported as stable because of decreases in the yield that may have been driven by the conflict and instability in the country. Now Myanmar, as the world-known leading source of illegally produced opium in the world, and the growing indication of this heroin from the Golden Triangle, so-called Golden Triangle heroin, to different parts of the world. And lastly, fragile illicit economy continue to drive in continued reliance on opiate income by farmers. So the dynamics of opium production and the cultivation really we can see from this report. There are several factors that influence that. First one is internal factors of Myanmar itself, as well as external factor that was represented with steep decreases in the opium poppy cultivation in Afghanistan. I think that is why it is important to continuously monitor the situation of this opium poppy cultivation in the country. And this one, together with the continued expansion of synthetic drug market in the region, I think it makes the situation of drug economy really further complicated. And also important, the increased flows of heroin from this region to the non-traditional market. And lastly, at the end of the day, to address this issue, law enforcement matter is not the only option. We know that why Myanmar farmers are increasingly engaging in this opium poppy cultivation following the military takeover. That's basically for their livelihood. And to support farmers, we need to have better resourced, well coordinated, and the local context that we have to understand to really support these opium farmers. Otherwise, we won't be able to address these challenges associated with opium poppy cultivation and also heroin manufacturing and trafficking. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Inshik, for the detailed overview, and Delphine for the overall context. If you have any questions, the floor is yours. Yep, the microphone, if you can.
It would be great if you could introduce yourself first, and then yes.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sally Jensen from AFP News Agency. I would just like to ask a little bit more if you could expand on the dynamics between the potential, the increase in conflict in the areas of poppy cultivation and how that affects, the yields and the production. If you could just tie that up, because is it, having a massive impact, or what kind of, yeah, thanks.
So I think the conflict itself acts as a two-way for drug economy. In first way, because of conflicts, there is some need for people to raise money, right? Whether it's armed groups or farmers, because of the conflict disrupt the economy itself. So that's why they need to find some avenues to raise money. And I think open poppy cultivation is one area that we can see, and that clearly represents increases in the open poppy cultivation ever since the military takeover. But at the same time, conflict itself can disrupt the practices of open poppy cultivation. As we can see, some of the decreases in the open poppy yield as well. At the beginning of this military takeover, we were able to see that both increases in cultivation and yield, they were able to find ways to put fertilizers and irrigation system, more sophisticated farming practices were observed. However, as the conflict intensifies, we see also decreases in open poppy cultivation. It definitely can be seen as North-Shan, where there's more conflict, there is a higher decreases in the yield as well. So it acts in a two-way. I hope that it answers your questions. Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Nathapop. I am a freelance journalist from Thailand. My question is, the opium in Myanmar become the heroin before import to Thai and Laos, or sometimes the opium itself directly import to Thai and Laos?
Opium itself directly export to Thailand and Laos as well, because there's a need for those opium users in those countries. It's not that significant, but still there is trafficking of opium itself as well.
It's the demand regionally is still increasing, and actually what we're seeing is also the fact that I think one important point for this actually report is it's going beyond the region, because as we see, the demand for heroin is still not met by the current production, and therefore this is why we see potential opportunities for further increase in the years to come on cultivation of poppy in Myanmar, particularly given the situation which is kind of controlled and maintained in Afghanistan, which was the other producer. But again, this is like from the known figures that we have. So because the demand remains very high at the regional level, as well as in other markets beyond, this of course has some cascading effect on an increase of the cultivation.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Sol Zadka, the author of a recent book about Islamization of Europe, a book that this club does not allow me to present to the members, not even display it here, but this is not, of course, the subject of today. What I'm asking you is, because there are conflicting reports about the attitude of this nasty military regime in Myanmar, Burma, about the opium industry. Some say that the army is trying to fight the industry, but as far as we know, they benefit from it, and even buy weapons that is financed by the industry of opium and heroin in the country. So to what extent the military regime is playing a double game, pretending to the outside world that they are fighting opium, but at the same time benefit from it a great deal?
It is quite difficult to just pinpoint how much actually. However, I can say that this opium economy certainly benefited some parts of the Myanmar military as well, because of if you look at some of the areas on the opium poppy cultivation, especially some of the high density areas governed by not only these armed groups that are against the Myanmar military regime, but also that are allied to the Myanmar military regime. So in that regard, it is difficult to say that they are directly involved in these open poppy cultivations, but they are indirectly benefited as well because of some of their allies are making money out of this opium economy. I guess it makes.
And I think we also have to say that there are very personal ties, obviously, because some of the individuals from the junta are actually coming from this region, so they have developed over the years some very close ties, both with the armed groups as well as with some of the criminal groups. So obviously, it's difficult to generalize in terms of mafia, but there are certainly individuals who are benefiting from this illegal economy.
Great. Any more questions? Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Paramet from Bangkok Post newspaper. So regarding the increase of the cultivations of opium during this year, the past year, what would be the recommendations for the Thai government to cope with these kind of situations along the border? Thank you very much.
Maybe just like what we're seeing is like notwithstanding with thing, we've seen like the plan for eradication of opium had actually already started before in the previous regime and has actually continued throughout this, like since the junta took power in 2021. So their efforts somehow have actually been mitigated by the reality in the ground, the fact that being able to eradicate opium cultivation, you actually have to go into a very remote area, which are not very well accessible, which make it particularly complicated and difficult for some of the law enforcement operations. What we see, of course, is that this is not something that, and because it's obviously somehow lucrative and it's an economic livelihood for the farmers, it's actually, of course, have a number of farmers drawn into a cultivation. So this is why it's very important to really invest in some alternative development programs in both sides of the border, and these are really yield very successful stories, and we have to really praise the resilient communities that are working in very difficult situations and that manage to really develop some very innovative cooperatives in growing tea, in growing coffee, in growing avocado. As I mentioned in the opening, the reputation now of the coffee in Myanmar is actually excellent worldwide. So these are kind of programs in which Thailand could definitely also continue to invest in and to cooperate and to develop, working closely, directly with the people of Myanmar and some of those communities. But then there's never going to be any alone solution to this problem, and this is why it's very important that it's also tackled at the regional level. And one of the initiatives that UNODC has really been supporting is this Mekong MOU, where all the countries really are working together in addressing some of those root causes of opium cultivation, also sharing some information in terms of data, but also supporting some of those coordinated action by the law enforcement activities, particularly from several countries. So it's very important that there is a regional coordination approach to this problem, because clearly the authorities of Myanmar cannot tackle this issue, given the scale of the problem, on their own.
Thank you. If I may just add one point, Thailand is known as a champion for alternative development. The Thai government has been Thai government was very successfully, reduced the area on the opium poppy cultivation through a very successful alternative development program.
The Royal Foundation, Deutung are two excellent examples of such alternative development programs.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm from Rapid Asia. I have like one question. Considering like the military takeover or like the political like instability, are there like any changing trends in like opium smuggling routes and like trafficking methods? Thank you.
Right, I think the trafficking itself is also impacted by the conflict as well. Because of the road condition and everything, sometimes we see that it's quite difficult to use certain road because of the conflicts around that area. And also this year, unfortunately, we had an earthquake in March 2025. That was also acted as a disruption of some of the trafficking coming out from the Shan state. But nonetheless, that is basically that conflict and this also this earthquake issues that has shifted some of the trafficking route, but it still continue.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes. One.
Thank you. I'm Zixi from MOU team of UNODC. Just a quick question. I noticed that for the 2023 and the 2024 Opium Survey, there are socio-economic analyses, which are, I think, are excellent. And for 2022 and 2021 report, there are no socio-economic analysis part. And for 2025 Opium Survey, there is no socio-economic analysis this part. So may I ask why? Why there is no socio-economic analysis for 2025 report? Thank you.
If I answer that in a very simple manner, basically lack of funding to conduct this socio-economic survey. It needs a lot of coordination and resources to visit those poppy growing villages and non-poppy growing villages. Need to have a lot of workforces to visit all those places as well. But 2025 was not possible. But of course, it's not like we conduct every year either in the past as well, depending on the situation that we have, the resources why we have, yes.
Thank you. Those were good questions. Anybody else? All right, so thank you so much for coming today. Thank you to the speakers, and I hope to see you next time.
And next time could actually be in June for the issuance of the World Drug Report, which is going to also have a focus on some of the trends with regard to other drugs than heroin, including the synthetic drugs. Thank you.
Thank you.